you have to take the person there, right? What's the goal of a radio broadcast?
Yeah, so paint the picture, obviously. Our biggest salvation is our crowd mic. If you can crank up that crowd mic, let the band be heard, and the crowd react to what you're calling.
Step into the Fieldhouse, your front row seat to legendary victories and untold stories. Hey, I'm your host, Lance Lunner, breaking down sports from the inside out, along with co-host Jimmy Lackey. It's more than just a game. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. Hey, welcome into the Fieldhouse Podcast. We're a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. So thankful you're here today. We have a very special guest, a friend of both Jimmy Lackey and myself. Of course, Jimmy, CEO and the main man here at Kids Inc., is our co-host today. And Jimmy, how's life? How's the knee? Everybody wants to know your update.
Look at that.
Moving well.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Tyler Cooper did a great job. Zero pain all along. I've had no pain.
Aren't you thankful we live in this era of medicine?
It's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy expensive, but it's crazy good.
It's crazy. I was walking in an hour.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
good stuff.
I had 2 detached retinas. I would be legally blind if I was in the Wild West, days. And now I see 20/20. It's just amazing what they can do. Yeah,
pretty
glad
impressive.
to do. You're doing well.
Yeah.
You looking forward to this one?
Yeah.
This is a little Dumas love between
black and orange.
Just for me.
And Canadian Wildcat.
I wore black and orange today.
Russell has a slash now, in between that.
I understand.
Used to be
but I
Sunray
don't.
Dumas. Now it's Sunray / Dumas / Canadian. Yep. So it's all
Go
good.
Demons.
Hey, let's bring him in though. He's a Dumas and Canadian broadcasting legend here today. Been on the call really for some incredible number of games. And then that includes Dumas State Volleyball Championships, Canadian State Football Championships. We're going to ask him. I think he sat in Brad Sham's seat one time to do a Canadian game. Yeah, we'll ask him about that. But we just want to welcome him to the Fieldhouse Podcast today, and that's Russell Gadbois. Russell, how's life, man? What's the best thing that happened to Russell Gadbois today?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I woke up again.
Okay.
And then secondly, I get to spend some time with you and Jim.
Yeah.
Who I idolize. I love you guys.
Yeah. Tell us how the meeting where you guys first met.
Oh, Lord, our dads were best friends. I mean, literally, Bob was the best friend my dad had on this earth. And, when my dad got older, Bob took care of him and, go walk his dog when his knee was bugging him. And they worked together at Swift. Back in the day, my dad had the insurance account out there. And
what'd your dad do at Swift?
Yeah, he was a transportation manager out there.
Wow. So like in charge of the trucks coming in and
out?
That's
right. Delivering all the product all across the country.
Your dads were a lot smarter than me. I got through college working on kill floor. So
hydrant.
There you go. Yeah.
I drove a shag truck.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I like it. These are great stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they just became the best of friends and I mean, obviously our families knew one another and it's been a long time friendship.
Those two played a lot of golf together too, didn't they, Jim?
They did, amongst other things.
We won't go into that on this podcast.
That's great. That is so cool. I didn't know that story till right now. I love that stuff.
Everybody has that one, and Bob Gadbois was that one for my dad.
Yeah,
so
that's special. Then.
Hands down, best friend my dad ever had.
That's cool to know. To know. So, Russell, obviously, take us in. I mean, why broadcasting? How did that happen? I mean, obviously it wasn't what you first started out doing, correct?
Right. I think I caught the bug, Lance, at a very young age, like 5 or 6 years old. One of my earliest memories was listening. I grew up in Plainview, and I was listening to KVOP radio, and I didn't know who the voice was on that staticky AM radio. And you know what I mean? When it lightning, you could hear it buzz. That's what I grew up on, and I kind of caught the bug at that time, and I really didn't realize it till later on in life.
Yeah.
And I was one of those weird kids that grew up to be a weird adult, but playing football out in the front yard by yourself, and you're calling the play. And,
cool.
And I'm Roger Staubach, and I'm throwing it deep to Drew Pearson. So that's where it kind of started for me.
I like that, Drew Pearson. That was the first NFL game I ever saw.
Really?
Mile High Stadium, Denver, Dallas. And those guys hooked up for a touchdown pass.
Did they really?
Yeah.
And I've heard on previous podcasts, Jimmy's that era as well. He's an old school Cowboy fan like me.
Hey, this is our 19th podcast. Who is your favorite 19? You're a sports guy. Who would be your favorite number 19 of all time?
Probably Clint Longley. Is that the one you were looking for?
Lance Allworth.
I was going to say Lance Allworth.
But yeah, Johnny Unitas was that too, so way back. But
I didn't realize Clint Longley was an ACU guy either.
Yes.
Canadians played there 3 times now at ACU. And
you didn't know that till then?
I did not know that.
Wow,
so.
okay. He flipped it there. So when you had a chance to actually live out your childhood dream, how'd that happen?
Like my first break into radio.
Yeah.
So there was a guy in Dumas by the name of Harold Mann. I don't know if you remember Harold. He may have preceded you getting here.
Yeah.
He broadcasts right now for Lamar University.
Nice.
And so he, right before he moved, I sat in with him in 1990 in the old Babe Ruth baseball press box in Dumas, and just sit there and kind of watched him and kind of watched his technical stuff. And this was old landline days now,
yeah,
where you had to have a phone line. But I watched a lot of that, studied him a little bit.
Wow.
He moves away that summer, and so the phone rings, and somebody wants the new station owner and manager wants to see if I'd be interested in doing radio. Well, I had a full-time job also, so that's
what were you doing?
And I was working at the time, probably driving a shag truck at that time. It was my mid-20s.
Yeah, okay.
So in my journey, Lance, I've had.
Wait, what's a shag truck? You know what is that?
It's one of those little single axles that you back up to, like at warehouse areas. You'll see them at like the Walmart warehouses and jockeying the trucks around. So I mentioned that my dad was the transportation manager, so all these truck lines bring their trailers onto the yard. They drop those trailers there, then they leave, and we shuttle the trucks around on the yard where they need them to load the product. So that's a short version of what a shag driver does.
I think a lot of people just learned something. You obviously knew that.
I did, because I worked at Swift. I worked in the hide room. They didn't let one-eyed guys drive those shag trucks. Couldn't see out of the other mirror.
I love that, yeah. And so did you jump at this, or did you have to think about it? What?
I was really caught off guard because I thought, man, I've sat in twice and maybe said 2 words on air.
Yeah.
But I really, it was a long life. If I could ever do anything that I love to do, that would be what I would like to try. And gosh, here it is, almost 40 years later.
So did you quit the job and go there full time?
No.
Okay.
I was going to say through my journey, I've had to have a lot of good supportive management and bosses and companies to work for to be able to take off. Even like I am today, I'm going to be taking 2 days off to go follow Canadian down to Elk City. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fire away.
Well, it's been fun watching him. I mean, like I said, we've known each other forever, but I mean, I want him to get to talk about his game, the games that he's called, those special games.
Me too.
You know,
I got a couple for him.
Front row seats to a lot of good sporting events. You know, back in the day, he can probably talk about when I was in high school. Now, our graduation class was in '80 in Dumas. Volleyball wasn't on the map.
That's correct.
Our girls won the state basketball championship that year, but volleyball wasn't on the map. 6 years later, Wilson gets the job, and they win state, and they become a powerhouse. Brenda Kitten is in Hereford, and that becomes the big rivalry. Now look where volleyball is today.
The whole panhandle, by the way.
But Jack Wilson really put it on the map back in the day.
I definitely had a Jack Wilson question, but if you don't mind, to Jimmy's point, what was the first game you ever called, and how'd it go?
Yeah, so that very interesting story. The first one I did was at what they all used to call Old Slick Bivens, Old Dick Bivens, before it was the pristine place it is now.
Yeah.
And it was Dumas Caprock.
Okay.
And I don't remember details, but
a lot of orange. And they play this week.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, that's where it all started for me. And I know Jimmy knows the gentleman I'm about to bring up, Gary Edwards from Dumas. He was a radio guy back in college in Lubbock, so he and I decided to go do these games together. Well, Gary started off and did the first half at play-by-play, and I was doing color, the only half I've ever done color. And I really appreciate the guys that can do that, because that takes a lot of talent. But so we switched at halftime, and that's where it started for me.
Wow.
And
why'd you switch? Just
it wasn't flowing. It wasn't going good.
Yeah. So you guys just knew.
Yes.
And then the other way it flowed.
It did.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Dumas Caprock, Dick Bivens. The old press box.
That's right.
You climbed up the stairs,
Yep.
and
You and I have shared a lot of press boxes together.
Glenn Howard would greet you at the top
Mr.
of those
Howard.
stairs.
He's a
the
legend.
Great legend, Mr. Howard, and he had that high-pitched voice.
That's
But
right.
he had control of that press. He was
He
like
in
going into
charge.
Oz. I'm telling you what. You know what I mean? He was just standing up there. You're allowed in or you're not. You know what I mean? So
That's right.
He was in charge of the middle school programs back in those days, and they ran like clockwork. I mean, he was the master.
yeah, always wore a tie. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that guy. So yeah,
Yep.
wrote a column saying my football season does not start until I'm greeted at the press box with Glenn Wilson, and he passed away that morning.
Really
Yes.
gives
Yeah.
me chills.
Gives me chills right to this day. But, yeah, great guy. So, all right, let's get back to Jack Wilson, one of the greatest coaching characters in the history of the Texas Panhandle. Putting it, what I loved about him, there was Jack is who he is. You know what I mean? First time I ever met Jack Wilson, he's pitching slow pitch softball,
Yes.
and he's on the mound, and he literally falls forward and throws the ball as he's on the ground. You know what I mean? Or he would throw it over his head or behind his back.
He was a
or whatever.
showboat.
I don't know how he did what he did with his body to get the ball across the plate.
I was amazed. I was like, what am I watching? You know what I mean? And so the first time you're like, what you strike one, you know? So, but anyway, Jack Wilson, was that one of your first experiences of covering a team that got great and you got invested with your heart and soul?
So that I started in 1990, and we're talking about the first football game. So later on that fall, when volleyball gets going, we didn't do regular
You're
season.
doing both.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And it's still working full time.
Yeah.
I was
okay.
young then.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Dumas wins in 1990, their third of a three-peat that year. So I went and watched a lot of the first two seasons. I didn't get to go to the state tournament, but got to go down, and it was a late call, too. Hey, we're going to send you down there. And, I mean, I fly down that day, and it's frantic to get to what was the old Burger Center.
Burger
down
Center, yeah.
in Austin.
So what was it like? Tell us.
Oh, man, unbelievable.
Calling your first state championship.
It was, all of that, and it all happened so fast, and all of a sudden you're on the plane back home and thinking, what just happened? And Jimmy was talking about our girls in Dumas winning state in 1980. I thought I would never see a state championship, and that was back in the days where your district champion went to the playoffs, and that was it. So I thought I'd lost my chance to ever see a state championship game, and well, little did I know that it was just kind of getting started in a really unique way. So.
How attached? Because you see these guys on a daily basis, and I'm talking about the parents and the players and all that. And when you're a hometown announcer, it's a far cry from being a national announcer where you're up in a booth. They may not even see you, and you're talking about that team. How special is that, and how challenging was that?
Well, it's really, when I look back and I think about all the memories, those are the ones I'm going to remember the most, is the relationships you make with, you don't get to form those relationships with every parent, but the ones that you do, they warm up to you, and it's just really special. Then you get to share the pregame and the postgame, and more so the parents a lot. Do you get to know better than the kids? You see them for a minute, they tolerate you with postgame interviews, and then you're visiting mainly with the parents and the coaches.
What's your favorite Jack Wilson story?
Gosh, there's
Do you
a ton.
have one?
Well, I think I'm going to age Jack a little bit here, but I think I'm right on this. His first year to coach in Dumas, he was the 7th grade girls coach when we were 7th graders. I think our girls had him as a coach, and I think that was his first year to coach. And fast forward, so my wife's first teaching job and coaching job was at Highland Park here in Amarillo. P.D. Fletcher moved from Dumas to Highland Park, and I'm going to I'm guessing this is correct, but volleyball had taken over by that point in time and left PD pretty high and dry on the basketball side. Highland Park didn't have volleyball at that time, so he got to come in and have the girls just for basketball, and Kim was his assistant at Highland Park. But Jack was blowing and going at that point in time, and because that would have been in the 1990 season, the beginning of the school year, when PD came to Dumas, and PD was the coach of that state championship team. But I'm not saying Jack ran him out of town, but I'm just saying my dad used to say by the time volleyball was over, those girls didn't want to play basketball anymore. And that one sport athlete started becoming a trend, and it hurt girls basketball. And so
I think Jack had a lot to do with the state championship win in 80.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Growing those girls from the ground up. And I really do believe in 7th grade, because when we were in junior high, our junior high was 7th, 8th, and 9th. You didn't go to high school till you were sophomores. And so, Jack had those girls those 3 years there, and like he said, they groomed them for Coach Fletcher. And our girls went to the state tournament their junior year, got beat, went back our senior year and won it. And
what made those teams so great, in your opinion? That Dumas volleyball run.
Yeah, so obviously Jack did, and I was going to finish the story that Jimmy was talking about. My class of boys had Jack as a 7th grade football, and I think we credit ourselves to his success with the girls because he decided these boys aren't taking me very far. So he decided
jumped over to the girls.
That's right.
Smart man.
That's right.
Smart man. Yeah.
And so you asked me a while ago some of my favorite memories of Jack, and Jimmy mentioned Brenda Ray or Brenda Kitten and those Dumas Hereford game. You would leave those gyms, Lance, I couldn't hear for 3 days.
Yeah, the packed houses, not only for Hereford Dumas, just from an outsider looking in, okay, one of the great rivalries in the history of the Texas Panhandle, Dumas Hereford volleyball in that 90s, early 2000 era.
And year after year.
Year after year.
And do you remember when Brenda finally beat Dumas? I think it was at the Cap Rock Activity Center. And I teased her about it later. She just did a face plant. Finally beat Dumas. And then those two just, over the course of time, they became the best of friends.
That is cool.
At times they were enemies, you know.
Yeah.
But those games are just so. I remember the time that Brenda beat Jack, that the Hereford crowd was singing "Hit the Road, Jack." You remember that?
My two favorite things about those two: number one, Kim and I went through our master's program with Brenda, so we got to know Brenda a long time ago, and know her in a little different light off the court, and then obviously on the court, watching what she's done and her success. And then probably one of my favorite memories with Jack is John Mark allowing me to call him when we inducted him into the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame.
Neat.
Getting to call him, pick up the phone and call him. And Charlotte knew I was going to be calling. And that was special for me to get to tell Jack that he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, both of them in the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame.
Cool.
That is cool. In your opinion, what makes a great broadcast? I'm sure you're very critical of yourself. You're very hard on yourself. I know that about you personally. But when because nothing's perfect. I realize that it's live. You could have done this better, could have done that better. But in your opinion, overall, what makes a really good broadcast?
Well, now I'm thinking from most current now, and it's the partnership. It's it's Steve Forrest.
Steve Forrest.
The Canadians.
You guys are amazing together.
Well, I appreciate that. He does such a great job with the technical end of it. Plus, he's a statistician by nature.
Yeah.
And he's
numbers guy.
Yeah. And you got to have a guy sitting in the color seat that knows when to chime in instead of talking over one another. So to me, that's the key thing. And we're leaving for Elk City today, and I guarantee you Steve's probably already there setting up because we're going to try video for the first time.
Yeah, okay. So. Yeah.
And you can tell by now, watching this so far, why I do radio, by the way. But, yeah, that's that. And, Lance, I grew up listening to cowboy football with Vern Lundquist. With the TV turned down.
Oh, wow.
And I've been a lifelong student, and I just didn't realize it. And listen to how they do it, watching what he's seeing, and how he calls a play, very different than a TV voice or analyst.
Yeah, no, very different. You have to take the person there, right? What's the goal of a radio broadcast?
Yeah, so paint the picture. Obviously, our biggest salvation is our crowd mic. If you can crank up that crowd mic, let the band be heard, and the crowd react to what you're calling. And we talked about volleyball a while ago, and it's in a godly way. I feel like that was setting me up for Canadian NASCAR football.
Yeah, we can get to that.
Ready to dive deep into the heart of sports? Then tune in, because that is exactly what we are here for at the Fieldhouse Podcast. But the Fieldhouse Podcast isn't just about us talking sports. It's about all of us, our community, our passions, and our love for the game. That's why we're reaching out to any and all local businesses who want to get in early on the action. Whether you're a restaurant looking to pack the house on game day, or a fitness center wanting to help our listeners take their game to the next level, we want to partner with you. By sponsoring the Fieldhouse Podcast, you're not just getting your brand out there, you're becoming a part of our sports family. Reach out to us today at fieldhouse@kidsinc.org. That's KIDSINC.org.
Russell's very famous for when Canadian, he knows them so well that they're about to get into what we call the NASCAR offense. And they're faster. I did a Bushland Canadian game, Jimmy, where I'm charting for the Globe News. I probably missed 80% of those plays, like what actually happened. I'm just looking up and down. Yeah. They're that fast together. But Canadian kind of brought that to the Texas Panhandle. But buckle up. We're going NASCAR.
That's right.
Well, how did you come up with that one?
I don't know where that came from, to be honest with you, but it stuck. And Steve got famous with it because I always put his name at the end of it. So, and that's another thing, too. We've been so fortunate to cover such a quality program with Canadian. You get deep games every year. You get meaningful games and not, third game of the year type atmosphere. So we've been very blessed to get to tag along with.
Yeah, let's brag on it. How many state championships have you called?
Oh, in total, I think somewhere around a dozen.
See that?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Jerry's World, you've been all over, but for Canadian particularly, what has that run been like for you guys to get through it? You great coaching staff.
Absolutely.
You go from Chris Ketting, to Andy Cavalier now. But is there a game, like Jimmy was talking about, is there a game that stands out?
And I wanted to add another name to that list before Chris, and it was Kyle Lynch.
Kyle Lynch.
So I got to tag
Legend
in
himself,
his last year. So, yeah, it's been – you couldn't even have fathomed what we've had a chance to just sit and get a bird's eye view. It's just – it gives me chills to talk about it. Just so blessed, so fortunate. I've done 1 in 9 seasons before, Lance. So,
okay.
So,
yeah.
So there's no – I'm doing the game, and I'm not even listening to the game, so –
It's a philosophy of mine, Russell, that that 0-10 team, those guys practiced every time that the 10-0 team did. You know what I mean? And so that's harder to do than be 10-0. I'm telling you, in my opinion. Yep. Now there's a reason you're 0-10, but still, the 1-9 season, fun to call though, tough to call.
Yeah, both. I guess.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's still a game.
But your heart hurts when you're getting beat dragging out of the press box and dragging your feet. But, yeah.
Is there a game in Canadian that stands out?
I listened to y'all's podcast the other day with Cale here, and I got to kind of revert back to the second half of the Newton State Championship at 18. Yep. The first half was ugly, and lots of things went wrong. I'm driving down there the day before, and I'm thinking, just please don't let anybody get killed tomorrow. Yeah. And I listened to the coach's show driving down that day that Cale had already recorded with Chris. And Coach Ketting said, if you don't think we're not going down there to win this game, there's something wrong with you. And sure enough, we start off with 21-0 at halftime. And Newton looked like TCU.
Yeah, really did. They have that purple look, too.
They did. And of course, we all remember the Jack Ketting hit.
Yeah.
And it seemed to kind of flip things around at that time, and it let those guys know, hey, we can play with these guys. And dang near pulled the game out.
Yeah.
Another one for me, Lance, was when about the middle of the 31-0 run for Canadian when they beat Mart in the state semifinal down in Wichita Falls. It was a telling game because we thought we were good. Mart was a powerhouse, and Canadian schooled them that night down there. It was lopsided and ugly. And I remember Steve and I walking into the press box that night, and the Mart broadcasters didn't know who we were. We were walking in, and they were already talking about, so who do you think y'all are going to play next week in the state championship?
Yeah.
I swore I'd never do that in a press box.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those are great memories. What about getting into Jerry's World and calling a game there where your Dallas Cowboys play?
Yeah, surreal is what that is. It's also very awkward. When you're in the end zone.
Oh, yeah, it's a terrible view.
Trying to watch the big screen.
Blame that on Jerry Jones. He's
That's
not
right.
going to give his prime seating to the media or the broadcasting crew.
And I'm with Jimmy on the Jerry Jones deal. I got to tell you, he hit it right on the spot. Great businessman, but My daughter's name is Landry, if that tells you anything.
Very cool. Yeah. So take us into calling a game there at Jerry's World.
The first one we did was 2014 against when Canadian beat Mason, and that was a start of their back-to-back. And then the following year we were in RG for the one time that they did it in Houston. But when you're going in, if you've never done this before on the high, and I've toured the stadium before, but when you go in with a game on your mind and trying to get your bearings about you and get to the press box and how do you do this and get the equipment, it was frantic. And it's still not real appealing to spectators is to go through all that parking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm torn between getting your own site but it's really cool to do a game at Jerry's World.
If you're a kid growing up, come
awesome.
on. You got to play in Jerry's World.
So I got
just my opinion.
I got to call Stratford's 2000 state football championship at Waco ISD, which is very similar to Dick Bivens. And then we also, the first one I did with Canadian was 2009 at Jones AT&T in Lubbock.
Wow.
So like you say, they've taken me places I never dreamed I would get to be.
Are there a couple of players that stand out for you that you'll never forget having the opportunity to call their games?
I want to go back to volleyball for a second, and I was fortunate enough. Lance, you remember Kim Bowner, don't you?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So she spearheaded what was the old Amarillo Sports Network.
Yeah.
So after calling Dumas volleyball, not very many people did radio volleyball at the time. So Kim
was a sports writer at the Globe News, one of the first female writers, and she covered volleyball, did a great job. And she still lives here in Amarillo.
Does she?
Yes.
I would love to see her again. Yes.
Yeah. I'll get you her number.
She got me a lot of gigs out of the Amarillo Sports Network because I had covered Jack and the Dumas girls. So I had a chance to tag along a time or two with Jan Barker, and so Brianne.
Oh wow! Ooh. Yeah.
That was a player.
Smooth.
Yes.
Smooth.
Get the pancake digs and just was out there serving way before she was even maybe grade school in playoff games when Jan was coaching. So
wow.
That's one that sticks out. And that whole Kelsey Black, some of those girls.
That was a run.
Yeah, it was. And from the football standpoint with Canadian, I know I'm going to miss somebody.
Oh, yeah. We're not.
But you got to start with Cameron Copley has got to be, and he's on staff now.
Yes.
So he and Braden Galla played for state championships, and now they're coaching Canadians.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm getting old.
Yeah, we're all old, but
yeah.
Tanner Schaefer.
Yes, Chance Cook. Ryan Alexander. You just keep going.
Yeah,
and I'm getting to where I forget some of these names.
Take us in, and then I'm going to let Jamie take over. But what, in your opinion, you see it? Why have they been able to do this in Canadian? Get this dynasty going.
It's culture there.
Because it's not 1 year. It's been 15 now.
And you mentioned, too, the continuity, the coaching staff.
Yeah.
They don't move. I also heard you on one of your podcasts, Lance, and you're exactly right. These Canadian kids get to work out 5-6 more weeks a year. So they're getting more reps, even the freshmen that are coming up and learning from the older guys.
Yeah. First time I learned that, Russell, real quick, it was the Emerald High. You know what I mean? They didn't make that many runs, but that group did. You know what I mean? Barry Lynch's group, actually. Those young guys in the next year who didn't play at all of a sudden they're, and Dipples went to explain to me, look, we got to work with these guys 6 extra weeks. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
So that's to my point. Where they have a chance to actually, as you well know, those practices are shorter. Right. They're really just repping. They're not getting after it, but the younger kids are actually able to coach.
Yeah, and they're zoning in on what's being
techniques and little things.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that late in the year, there's got to be a little bit of a gift for that coaching staff to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
So
Chris Kenning has always told me this about a team. Once they're done practicing, they're done.
Yep.
And you can tell. Hey, they're happy to get to the state quarters, happy to get to the state semis. We're done.
Countless times over the years, you've seen, boy, this team is going to go far, and then they're done.
Right.
I can name some names, but I won't.
No, it happens. It's okay. Though that group is done. But
I've learned so much more about the sport of football from the broadcast booth and being, especially around the Canadian guys and huddle and listening to them than I ever knew playing back in the day. So it's been a great ride.
So is there a reason, in your opinion, why they're so good?
Canadian. It's community over there. It's cowboys, It's support from their community, like I said. I don't know. It's a multiple of things. They have had great talent.
They have had, but these kids are dedicated for something.
Yes.
I mean, like crazy dedicated. What's up with that?
I don't know if there's something in the water. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's a question we get asked quite a bit. How do they do this every year? And and they've competed. You think about their state championships from 1A through 3A. They've won state in those classifications.
Do you have a lucky headset that you wear?
Well, I have a headset that I wear, and I'm a left mic guy. People ask me that all the time. So Steve's right.
Okay.
So I'm left, so that partners out pretty well. So we're not running into each other. But no, I don't know. They've all been lucky for me, just the opportunity to get to wear them and to see some of the things I've seen and hopefully improve over the years. And you were talking about from the success of a broadcast. It's hard to do, but you got to go back and listen to yourself just to see what you want to do differently. And I think I'm a product of every single person I've ever listened to, even the ones you don't want to be like. You think, man, I don't want to sound like that.
Yeah.
But I'd sure like to sound like Vern Lundquist, or remember Mark Holtz that used to call the Rangers.
Hello, Win, call him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he had a good voice, a good delivery with it. So you
really
try
did.
to emulate those things, and sometimes it works out, sometimes not so much.
I think you go back to what you're talking about, what makes that culture so special. Think about the junior high coaches. I think that's where it starts. Think about the junior high coaches we had.
Yes, very.
They were a tenured group. They weren't these brand new first year coaches. They've been there. They've been part of that staff. It wasn't this staff and that staff. It was a holistic staff.
You're talking about Joe Patton.
Oh,
Don
Coach
Phillips.
Mowry, Coach Phillips, Dad, Coach Moore, that whole bunch back in the day. It's staffs like that. The Larry Dipples had them in the Crockett and the Bonham middle schools. Those good coaches work those junior highs or middle schools, whatever you want to call them today. Successful coaches work those middle schools, and they put their product in place there, and it works its way up. They tell those junior high coaches what they want. They involve them in the process, and they keep them, and that migrates itself to the high school. But I got to ask you one question before we get out of here. Chris Ketting, talk about him. He's one of the special people to me, and I want to hear it from you because you spent a lot more time with him.
Class act. I've told Lance this before. He called me when Chris had his diagnosis a year or so ago, and I told Lance at the time, if you want to have a short conversation, have Chris talk about himself because he just doesn't do it.
Yeah,
and
very well said.
So I didn't on the Canadian staff. I worked with a poor old guy named Jeff Isom. He got tabbed as the press secretary, and he tells me the story. And I'll get back to Chris. I won't forget you. But he says when he was hired on to coach, Chris made him in charge of dealing with the radio guy. and so Jeff goes, oh, great. So one of my dearest friends right now on the staff. But
yeah, that's cool.
So Chris did his best, Lance, after games to avoid Russell because he saw me coming for the post-game interview. So he spent most of his time running away from me. But it's kind of funny you ask because Steve and I went to the Borger scrimmage here not too long ago and sat by Chris and Rosemary through the whole scrimmage. I don't think I watched a play of the scrimmage. Talked to Chris the whole time, and we reflected on the Newton game. We talked about his sons, Bill and Jack, and some of those great memories. But, Jimmy, in answering your question, just a class man, first of all, great coach. One of those guys that delegates his work. He doesn't try to micromanage. He lets his coaches, and he's got a great, Andy Cavalier now was a
Yeah, it's one of the great staffs in the state of Texas.
Yes, and I think it starts with with Kyle Lynch, with Chris Ketting, now Andy Cavalier. But super guy. I think the world of him, and he's doing great. By the way, saw him; he's looking good. Rosemary's got him running.
He's running. Chris plays a lot of golf, runs a lot. In case everybody out there knows pretty much, but he's early on slot of however you want to phrase it of Alzheimer's, but. He's a happy man right now, though. Unfortunately, that disease can make some people really mean and forgetful. Chris is so far from that. And we wish him the best. Obviously, that I bring that up. You have been in some amazing stadiums. You've seen pitch Forks on fire in Dumas. You've seen the sunset over Canadian.
Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, man, those are two of the best. Is there a favorite stadium where you called games or a memory of a stadium that – I mean, obviously just getting into Jerry's World is cool, but like you said, it's frantic.
It is.
You're just a visitor there. You're in this nice plush place. Get them out. Next game coming up. You know, we've all been there and done that. Yeah.
Plus, you've got those emotions for the game going on. It's just, and people say, "Oh man, that must have been so much fun." Well, I was miserable till after the game was over.
Yeah.
The best places for me to call, really, the best seat for me. One of them is Dick Bivens. Lowry Field in Lubbock is a great for a high school radio broadcaster. ACU. We got to call the first game at Buffalo Stadium, the new Buffalo Stadium. Jimmy was there that night that we played Abernathy. COVID year.
Yeah. Great crowd.
Yeah, so those are for views. Some of my better stories, though, and we could talk about this forever, are the not so great press boxes.
Let's hear a press box story because we have all experienced it, especially myself.
Well, I've done games, Lance, from the tailgate of my pickup, from the front seat.
Awesome.
Got to one of those gigs.
How'd that game go?
I don't remember. I just know one time when I was freelancing for Kim and the Amarillo Sports Network, I got the phone call to go cover a baseball 3-game series in the playoffs with Amarillo High and Odessa Permian.
Okay.
That was scheduled for Friendship. We're driving down. This was bag phone day.
Yeah.
So the bag phone rings. I can't remember the head baseball coach at the time for Amarillo High, but he calls, "Hey, it's been raining for 3 days. We're changing settings." I said, "Okay, where are we going?" "Seagraves, Texas." Seagraves is, I don't know, not very big. So, again, this is Odessa Permian and Amarillo High pulling in with their big buses into little old Seagraves, Texas. I don't know how we got a phone line. Well, like we did it on a bag.
Did they have a press box?
No.
Okay.
Front seat of the pickup. Trying to get lineups right behind the
Mojo and Amarillo High.
in Seagraves, and these little kids coming out, these big buses are coming into town. What's going on?
Yeah.
They moved the series the next day to Midland High, so we're traveling. So, and then it's a 2-gamer in Midland over there. But that was really talking about press box seats. Sometimes on the high school level, it's not real glamorous, but they're memories.
You know, all the ones I did when I worked at the Globe News, you know, when I first started, I covered small school football, we called it, and you had a Metro writer. I was with David Stevens at one point, and I always consider it, some of my cohorts, and I'm not going to name names, they would complain like, you know, they made me do this. I consider myself a visitor.
Right.
They are there every week in and out doing their own little things, okay? And you're just a visitor.
Yep.
Very gracious. I've been stuck on top of the press box on very cold nights in Childress, or with a Childress playoff game that froze my hands. Was in Grooms where there was a wasp nest up there.
Kimbrough had those.
Yeah, you're right. Kimbrough, yeah, good stuff.
I love your stories too,
the food.
I love the food, but some of your stories about getting locked in.
Yeah,
stadiums.
I've been locked in a couple times, but the one that ticked me off the most was this, Jimmy. They said, "Lance, I got one request. I'm in Plainview, Bulldog Stadium, playoff game. Hey, just turn off the press box lights for us, you know, and then lock it up, you know, and you can stay as long as you want, because usually they scurry you out. Mojo Land was the worst.
See ya.
You would go down and get an interview, and the blinds were down. Get the heck out of here. So that you'd have to go find a Tootin' Totem or something, or not, whatever it was down there. But anyway, turn off the light, the press box light. I lock the door, look back, and what's on? The frickin' press box light.
You'll never be
the
invited
one
back.
thing I should have done.
They gave you one job to do.
And they were very nice about it. You know what I mean? But press box food as well is legendary.
Yes.
So
hey, we got to get him on the road to Elk City, but I got a question for you.
Go for it.
How many stadiums besides Dumas are east-west?
Not many. The one that really freaks me out is Vernon. When I go to Vernon, I still think it's north and south for some reason. Not many, Jimmy. Very good question. I'm trying to think.
That is. What was the philosophy, guys?
I have no idea. Honestly, I can't answer that
I will
question.
say you this.
But you just don't see them.
No.
You don't. And the Dumas coaches and the quarterbacks will tell you, we make sure their eyes are in the sun.
Right.
That they will choose that game.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Childress is east-west.
Spearman is another one,
Okay.
I think. Help me, Lance.
Is Spearman, is Childress?
I think so.
I think Childress
I
is
think
East
Childress
West.
is
There's not many.
East-West.
There's
No.
not many.
That's a
Dumas
good-
is the most famous one, it seems like to me, because
Yes.
Childress has the rock around
Yeah,
it.
Right.
You
WPA
kinda-
rock. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a
Nostalgic.
great question.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
Is Clarendon East-West?
I think it is.
I think it is
Matter
too.
of fact, passing by. And Memphis is kind of sitting on an angle, isn't it?
Yeah, Memphis is on a little bit of an angle, right off 287.
Always younger, not as a kid, but younger, going through Memphis. They always had colored lights on the scoreboard. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It is pretty cool. Mike Roden grew up there and did a lot of games. I asked him how many footballs actually
Went out
get
in the-
287. He says, not as many as you think. You know what I mean? It's a little farther than you think. But he said you always got the clowns on the 18-wheelers coming through horn, like you're getting ready to call a play. And,
Right there on the highway for sure.
I know you got to go to Elk
Yeah.
City, but man, I'm gonna let Lance finish it up. But
No,
for
go
me,
ahead.
thanks for coming.
Thanks for having
Tell
me.
your mom and dad howdy for me.
I sure will.
I'm just tickled that you got to spend some time with
Yeah,
us.
I
so.
sure appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to say, Russell, to commit yourself to all these kids, coaches, but the professional job you do. You're not there to bash them. You know they're going to struggle. They're going to have great moments. You're fair on both of them. I've always admired that about you, and I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks. It's been a great walk.
What's the score going to be? Canadian Elk City.
I'm gonna
We
say,
got him on record right here.
Yes, you will. I'm going to say 35-24 tonight.
Closer game than
Yeah.
most think. Yeah.
Yeah.
They bit off a really tough non-district schedule.
It's tough. Elk City's 600 enrollment, Canadian 3, but this is what Canadian likes to see. So
You expect Canadian to get on a run again?
I think they can do it. They've got a little work to do. They're going to be pretty good on the lines of scrimmage. Got a little work to do in the skill set, but I think
No Cavalier at quarterback.
that's going to be rough. No Luke Flowers, Preston Newmeyer. It's going to be.
Those are names.
Elk City's football team is much improved in the last 2 or 3 years.
They are.
Obviously, we have an office there, so I have a little bias in the fact that there's some good kids, and should be a good football game.
I like that turf over there too. It's one of the few natural ones you still play on.
It's thick.
Yes.
It's thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good stadium.
Yeah. Hey, great stuff today. Jimmy, as always,
guys.
thanks a lot. Don't forget, we try to do this on a weekly basis. We can't thank you enough for listening in and viewing, and tell people about it. This is the Fieldhouse Podcast, number 19. Clint Longley. You didn't say Lance Allworth?
Lance Allworth.
Okay, and Lance Allworth. So that's our number 19. So, hey, we'll see you soon. This was the Fieldhouse Podcast.